the air on a busy Tuesday. 9:43 this morning, the timeline begins. Vikings signing former #1 pick offensive tackle Jake Long to replace both Matt Khalil and Andre Smith, who are on the IR. 1027 MMAfighting.com reporting that free agent defensive end Greg Hardy putting his NFL career on hold, and he will pursue a career in mixed martial arts. Of course, no takers when it comes to teams in the National Football League. 10:32 this morning, the NFL upholding the 10-game suspension for Eagles right tackle Lane Johnson for violating the league's performance-enhancing drug policy. And then news coming just about a half an hour ago, Chip Kelly announcing that Colin Kaepernick will start at quarterback on Sunday, replacing Blaine Gabbert as the 49ers take on the Buffalo Bills. Welcome in. Great to have you here with us on a Tuesday afternoon. Jim Trotter, Field Yates, Ed Werder, I'm Jade McCarthy, and we will begin with the news out of the 49ers this afternoon that Colin Kaepernick will once again get the nod to be the starting quarterback for the franchise. This decision coming, of course, off of 4 straight losses by the 49ers. Chip Kelly saying today that he is going to go forward with Colin Kaepernick. Jim, let me start with you. What does this decision mean, not only for Colin Kaepernick, but also for Blaine Gabbert? Tough to go back, right? Yeah,
you got to believe that this is the end of Blaine's career in San Francisco going forward. I mean, he's 9-31 as a starter. Chip handed this job to him based on Colin not being healthy in the offseason as well as training camp, and Blaine couldn't run with it. He's been terrible this year. There's no other word to explain it. When you get gimme plays down the field deep, coaches will tell you you're only going to get 2 to 3 chances each game for that big play. Blaine has had the opportunity the last 2 weeks to make those plays. One against Dallas to Torrey Smith, one last week to Rod Streeter. He missed big time both of those plays. So from that standpoint, it was time to make a change. But this is a huge risk for the 49ers at this standpoint for future seasons because they have not, I'm told, restructured his contract at this moment. That doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means it hasn't happened to this point. And if he were to suffer a season-ending injury and not be able to pass a physical in April, they're on the hook, I'm told, for close to $20 million in cap dollars next year and the year after. So they've got to be careful here with this. It's a huge risk. Ultimately, it was Chip's decision. He's in control of the 53. He wanted to make the change. But his background, I'll say this. Everyone I've talked to there tells me that Colin, of the 3 quarterbacks who were there, Blaine Gabbert, Colin Kaepernick, and Christian Ponder, Colin has been the worst quarterback in practice. The best has been Christian Ponder. So make of it what you will, but right now they're going to evaluate Colin.
There's a timing aspect to this, of course, Jim. You mentioned the contract, and if it does get done in the next couple of days here, it might make more sense. But also, you look at the calendar of their schedule, they're 1-5. The season seems to be going nowhere, perhaps towards the basement of their division only. And they had this Thursday night game. Those 3 extra days the coaches had to evaluate their roster and perhaps have more further conversations with Colin and his representation about a restructured deal sort of made today, though, feel like, listen, if you're not going to do it now, when are you going to make the switch to Colin Kaepernick, even given his poor performance in practice?
Right. They've been discussing this restructure for quite some time. It's been weeks. This is not something that's happened in the last week or so. So that's not really the issue here from Chip's standpoint, from a football standpoint. He made a decision that he feels is best for the team. One thing when you talk to people about Chip, he's very competitive, and he wants to win, and he wants to give his team the best chance to win. And right now he feels that Blaine Gabbert is not that guy.
But this is a gamble financially
without a doubt
that the Redskins would not take last year, right? This was the very same situation that caused them to keep Robert Griffin III completely out of uniform on game day. So it's not an insignificant thing that he's doing here. And I guess to have any credibility, they have to make a change like this, given how poorly Gabbert has played at quarterback and the fact that they do have a guy in Colin Kaepernick who in 2013 got this team to a Super Bowl and very nearly won it. And he said today, hey, this is not the Colin Kaepernick of 2013. I mean, so you talk about lowering expectations even as you make a move that may make you somewhat relevant for a short period of time. There you go.
Here's part of the problem, too, with this move. Look, everybody loves the backup quarterback on a bad team. We know that. He's the most popular guy in the in town, I should say.
Not in the locker room.
Right, not in the locker room, in town. But if you look at it right now, defenses know that Colin is best when he's on the move outside the pocket. And if you look at last year, according to our stats, in the pocket, Colin had the 2nd lowest QBR of any quarterback in the league last season. The one guy he was better than, Blaine Gabbert. So from that standpoint, I'm not sure why people think all of a sudden Colin going into the lineup is going to make it that much better. He was benched last year because he was struggling. His play had declined in 3 straight years. So it's great that Chip is making the change to give some hope to the guys in the locker room. But right now, there's no guarantee that this is going to get much better because it's all about complementary parts, too. This team isn't as strong as it was the last time Colin had success.
Yeah, calling him the better option right now is somewhat
damning with faint praise.
No
Absolutely.
question about it. You look at his, objectively speaking, you look at his last 13 games that he's played and significant snaps in, and he's only completed 60% of his passes or more in 4 of those. He has not thrown 3 touchdowns in a single game since October 13th of 2014. So we are knocking on the door of the 2-year anniversary. Colin Kaepernick lacks 2 critical traits right now in quarterback player, has lacked them recently. Decision-making and accuracy. More careless with the football and not accurate with the football. If he's going to resurrect his career, and perhaps this is his last best shot to do so as a starting quarterback, he's got to be leaps and bounds better than those 2 areas where he massively struggled, which is part of the reason why he got benched last year.
But nobody in the NFL has made fewer big plays, gains of 20 or more yards, than the 49ers with Blaine Gabbert. And he's 3 of 14 throwing the ball more than 20 yards down the field.
And there have been opportunities.
Yep.
And he has missed them. And that's why he is not starting now.
What about the notion, all the headlines surrounding Colin Kaepernick this season have, of course, come in the pregame with him making a stance by taking a knee during the national anthem. What happens with that now that he is a starting quarterback in this league once again?
I don't think anything happens. I think Colin is who he is. He's made a decision. Everyone knows about it. The organization stands behind his right to protest. The organization has committed $1 million to local community groups to try and deal with some of the issues that Colin has raised. So I don't think that's going to have any impact going forward. I think it's something for folks on the outside to talk about, but not internally.
And I don't think that just because he's the starter, the message reverberates louder or anything. He has started a national discourse. According, a lot of people believe that. Colin Kaepernick has made a dramatic impact, even in a backup capacity, with what he has elected to do. Other players, other sports, you name it. A lot of people have joined in behind what he is trying to champion, what he is trying to get a message across about, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
But as they go to blue-collar cities and so forth, and there are going to be opportunities now for people on a more regular occasion to make their support or displeasure known because he's going to be on the field playing 60 plays a game.
And I live in San Diego, which is a military town, and he was there the week after his protest went national. He's not going to receive, in my opinion, any sort of greeting worse than what he got there in terms of the boos and whatnot. There will be people who support him in those stands, just as there were people in San Diego who supported him that night. So, and he played well in that game. So clearly, the talk about people showing their displeasure with him didn't affect him that night. And I think the 49ers obviously are hoping it doesn't affect him going forward. The larger question to me is, what if he does struggle? Then what?
Yeah.
Are we going to Christian Ponder then?
Probably.
I mean,
based on practice reports, I would say so.
This is the thing about the 49ers at this point. You ask yourself, how do we get to this point where in your evaluation of these quarterbacks, you thought it was okay to go into the season with these 3? Blaine Gabbert has never succeeded in the NFL. Colin, again, his play had been regressing over the last 3 years, and yet Chip had to have been involved in those discussions to say, I'm comfortable with these quarterbacks. Clearly, unless Colin all of a sudden recaptures that magic, they clearly missed in evaluating these quarterbacks.
Which even Chip Kelly didn't suggest was likely.
One thing to note, the coaching mindset, this probably goes across all sports, but every coach I've spent time around is they believe in their own abilities to resurrect a player and his career based off what they do offer and what you maybe have seen in the past. So although we are all sort of programmed right now to think of Colin Kaepernick as a struggling quarterback, there might be a part of Chip Kelly's brain that's saying, I remember that guy that still gives Packers defensive players nightmares from what he did against them in the playoffs.
Sure.
Perhaps he's saying to himself, let me see if I can't rekindle some of that magic we saw just a few years ago.
But then if you believe that, then Blaine Gabbert's not your starting quarterback to this point.
No, quite. I'm just saying, but going forward, that's probably part of the mindset you have to adopt.
Right, and they felt that physically he wasn't ready to start at that point. But I will say this again. All we have this year is that preseason game against San Diego, the 4th preseason game, and he did look good in that game. So maybe Chip knows something that we don't, and maybe he can resurrect his career. We won't know until he gets out on the field. But based on history being our guide, the last 3 years, do not show us or tell us that he is going to succeed once he gets out
And
there.
the performance in San Diego was not compelling enough for Chip Kelly to make the move at that time or any time until now.
Because he had invested so much at that point in Blaine. And again, Colin had missed the entire offseason and had missed part of camp because he had arm fatigue from not being able to work out all season. Sure. So in Chip's defense, I think he really didn't have much of a choice at that point but to go with Blaine Gabbert.
But it was just last week Chip Kelly was saying this guy can't make it through an entire game physically.
We're going to find out.
How much is his weight going to be a topic as we try to find out? About 10 pounds under his playing weight previously.
You know, personally, I don't know how big that is. All I know is that people there have told me that the strength isn't there from 2 years ago. So whether or not that's because he lost weight, because he couldn't work out, he couldn't lift weights after the 3 surgeries he had in the offseason, whether that's due to him being a vegan now, we don't know. But again, until we see him on the field, you know, I don't want to throw Colin under the bus here and say that he can't resurrect his career, because other guys have come back and resurrected their careers. But when you look at the totality of all of this, the parts around him, what he had done the last 3 years, all of those things, I say he's got a long road to go here. Now, you hope that Chip can get it out of him. We'll see.
How much are Chip Kelly and Colin Kaepernick's NFL careers, future-wise, now going to be tied together with this decision?
Yeah, I don't think they are particularly that much, because Chip did not acquire Colin Kaepernick, did not endorse an extension for Colin Kaepernick. If
tried to trade him.
Tried to trade him, exactly. If Colin Kaepernick does not succeed in this situation, Chip Kelly presses forward. If he does, however, people will be talking about the brilliance of Chip Kelly once again, because just a few years ago, he was the hottest thing in NFL coaching circles, other than Bill Belichick, perhaps. But if he can get Colin Kaepernick back on track, that will be a major feather in his cap.
Certainly going to be much more conversation to come as we work our way to Sunday, and following that and what we see what Colin Kaepernick does against the Buffalo Bills. We have much more to come here. We'll check back on Monday night's game when we return with your Tuesday NFL Insiders. We continue with press coverage here on NFL Insiders this afternoon. Justin Forsett signing with the Lions, and his tweet, by the way, let's eat, #OnePride.
This team needed running back depth after a recent injury to Dwayne Washington. Zach Zenner was one of 2 running backs active on Sunday, of course, Theo Riddick being the other.
All right, let's get to the news that crossed this morning. The NFL upholding Lane Johnson's 10-game suspension. Here is Howie Roseman's reaction in a statement. We're very disappointed that Lane Johnson has been suspended 10 games. His actions have affected the entire organization. It goes on, moving forward, he has no choice but to hold himself accountable. It sounds a little bit like Howie Roseman is saying, okay, Lane, this is on you. Pull it together, because you're responsible for what you put in your own body. What are the Eagles losing here, Ed?
Well, they're losing their athletic right tackle for full 10 games going forward. Coming off a loss, now they have some real adversity, really, for the first time since Carson Wentz became their starting quarterback. I've been told they're going to start Halapuli Vaiti. Did I get that even close to right? I don't know. Did it really?
Perfect 10.
He'll be the right tackle. You know what?
Big V.
They call him the Big V, and that's from now on what I'm calling him. You know, I think Doug Peterson just thinks this is the least disruptive thing he can do with his offensive line. You know, there was a lot of talk about Alan Barbery, who's been playing well at left guard, moving out to right tackle. I think the Eagles were a little concerned that they might be causing themselves weakness at 2 positions doing that, and that this way, if they need help outside at right tackle, it's easy to release a back that way, line up a tight end over there to help him out. So go ahead.
You know, I think you're right. And I spoke to one veteran tackle who became a starter midway through his rookie year, and he thinks that this is a silver lining because of this. He said when he came out, you go through the combine, you go through your training, you go through the draft, you go through rookie camps, you go through training camp, and you never get a chance to breathe. He said now this young tackle has had 5 weeks to basically take a deep breath, take everything, learn about the adjustments of the game, the tempo, what it takes to prepare for, all those things. He wasn't just thrown in. So he thinks there could be success with a young tackle because he's had that break, as opposed to having to play right away.
And he's looked good, apparently, against their defense in practice. You know, I mean, they've known this was coming since training camp, and so they've been looking at their various options and studying them in, you know, film sessions, on the practice field, and they have concluded that this is by far the best option they have.
For future defenses the Eagles will face that are licking their chops at the prospect of getting Carson Wentz under pressure, a word of warning. He is 84.4% accurate so far when facing 5 or more rushers this season. The best in the NFL. So I'm not saying this loss is not a big deal for the Philadelphia Eagles, but...
Well, but those guys don't get home because they got guys like Lane Johnson blocking.
No question about it. I'm just saying Carson Wentz has been so terrific throughout this season. By the way, one thing to note from a housekeeping department for Lane Johnson, he signed this huge extension this offseason, including nearly $21 million in guaranteed money. Because of this suspension, the future guarantees are voided. He's got to earn that money now year to year. He's a very good player. He could very well earn that money. But it's a whole different ballgame. Guarantees in the NFL, as we know, hard to come by. He no longer has them in his contract.
He is eligible to come back Monday, December 19th. And what a game for the Big V to start with.
Big V.
The Big V.
It's going to handle some business, I bet.
Coming on against the divisional opponent and rival, Washington Redskins. All right, when we come back, we're talking, well, about that other division, the one that the Panthers find themselves in the basement of. NFL Insiders continuing. Well, Carolina found themselves on the losing end of Monday Night Football last night, and the Falcons are off to get another hot start. They lead the way in the NFC South. Panthers, the 7th team to lose the first 4 of their first 5 games of the season after a trip to the Super Bowl. Kind of familiar for them also. Elias tells us Carolina was the last to do it back in 2004. How bad is this situation for Carolina right now, Ed?
Well, I think it's interesting that, 1 week they have a cornerback, Ben Wickery, and he's.
You love these names today,
this is good, right? He's starting at corner, and he's assigned to stop Julio Jones, and Julio goes for 300 yards, and the next week there's no spot on the roster for the corner anymore. He's gone. He's with another NFL team at this point. But, I talked to a defensive coordinator who played them, and he said they just seem like they've gotten too cute on offense, that they just need to line up and try to smash people instead of all the misdirection runs. But one thing I think we can't lose track of is the fact that they've been without Cam Newton unnecessarily for 5 quarters because he didn't finish a play and he got hit by the Falcons and suffered a concussion from which he's still not yet recovered.
Sure, but then one of the things coaches talk about being most important in terms of the outcome of games is plus minus. And if you look at them last year when they went 15-1, they were a league high plus 20 in the takeaway giveaway ratio. This year they're a -7. So I think that speaks to some of their struggles this year. And then you can also see defensively, they're not generating the same pressure. They're not executing the same fits that they did a year ago. And therefore these linebackers that were clean so many times and were able to flow to the ball aren't able to do that now. So they've got a lot of issues right now. Don't see it turning around. When you look at history, teams that start 1-4, only 6% of them under this current playoff format have gone on to advance to the postseason.
You talked about not being able to generate as much pressure. It's also reflected in the pass defense numbers. After being 2nd in the NFL in terms of yards per attempt allowed, they're 29th in the NFL so far through 5 games. And frankly, the 300-yard game for Julio Jones skews that a little bit.
Sure.
But this is a team that does not spin the dial a bunch in terms of coverage. They play a bunch of zone because they want to get home quick and force quarterbacks into quick throws. Well, they haven't been able to get home quick or hardly at all, and we've seen the trickle-down impact that goes down to a secondary that, yes, it's without Josh Norman, but the issues run a whole lot deeper than that.
But it's funny. That's what they said when they let Norman go. Or one of the reasons they could do it is because they would play a cover 2, cornerbacks. There wasn't a premium on corners in that defense, and now it's come back in some ways to bite them because they can't generate that pressure that they need so that these corners aren't exposed.
Same coaching staff, most of the same players who went to a Super Bowl off a 15-1 season. It's really hard to figure out.
Yeah, not exactly sure what it is. Can't put your finger on it yet, but they have a lot of work to do if they want to try to climb out of the basement in the division. All right, still ahead, we're going to wrap things up here on NFL Insiders, but we do have, some fantasy talk coming your way next. Fantasy football kickoff. Michael Smith hanging out. What you got?
That's right, Jade. Gentlemen, obviously Colin Kaepernick is under center for the 49ers. What's his value? We'll tell you. Has Martellus Bennett overtaken Gronk as the Patriots tight end to own? And the Falcons, is it time to stop doubting them? We'll tell you after Insiders.
Of course, the big news coming out this afternoon. Well, when you throw more interceptions than touchdowns, that finds you riding the bench, and Colin Kaepernick now starting at quarterback moving forward for the 49ers. Lots of eyes on the Bills game this weekend.
More than previously thought would be there, that's for sure.
Maybe your eyes will be on it. Maybe you'll be there.
I think Ed
got a
Werder
game.
is
I'm in Green Bay.
voluntary.
Halapuli Valley Vitae. That's all I have to say this afternoon.
Big V.